Hey everyone, happy day one of KubeCon. Thank you all for making it. I know this has been an incredibly long day, so thank you for sticking around for the very last session of day one. We're going to be talking today about making the leap, what Gateway API needs to do to support Ingress-NGINX users as hopefully they migrate to Gateway API. My name is Rob Scott. I work at Google on Kubernetes networking. I'm also a Gateway API maintainer. And I also have used Ingress-NGINX very heavily in production, dozens of clusters, and I am very grateful for Ingress-NGINX being amazing. But with that, I'll hand it off to James.
Hi everyone, my name is James Strong. I'm a solutions architect at Isovalent, now at Cisco. I help folks implement Kubernetes networking with Cilium and secure their clusters with Tetragon.
So let's dive into a little bit of context. What are we talking about, and why are we talking about both Ingress-NGINX and Gateway API? Because obviously Ingress-NGINX in the name is an Ingress implementation. What does that have to do with Gateway API? Well, let's back up a little bit. How many people are familiar with Gateway API? Okay, that's great. That's good. So Gateway API graduated to GA in 2023. And one of the things I really like to highlight about this API is it's been, in my opinion, I think there's good data behind this. This is the most collaborative API in Kubernetes history. We've had hundreds of contributors that have helped make it the API that it is today. It's a feature-rich API that is a superset of the Ingress API. And today we have more than 30 implementations of the API already, with more on the way. So it's been great to work with this community. It's really exciting to see kind of the next generation. And really this was initially called Ingress v2, so that should give you an idea of what the goal was. This was the next generation API for Ingress, and that's Gateway.
So with Ingress-NGINX, how many people are using Ingress-NGINX? A lot. How many people had to patch their clusters last week? There should be more hands up. It is a SIG network sub-project. I didn't write this slide, but it does say one of the most popular Ingress controllers, 40% of clusters according to Wiz. Thanks, Wiz, for that information. It has a unique set of extensions for the Ingress API via annotations and a config map. It has 118. That number I will continue to repeat throughout this conversation because it is important for this context as a whole. That fourth point right there has been difficult to maintain the massive set of functionality offered by projects. It's really easy to implement an annotation to switch a config in the NGINX conf and then leave us and no one else there to support it. So we have to figure out context on that. So it is difficult as maintainers to continue to support this level of functionality from an individual project. And we've probably had, I think, 4 or 5 issues that we've had to close for people asking about Gateway API support. And it's been an interesting conversation, I think, I want to say for the last 2 years, having this conversation around it. So, yeah. Some of the changes ahead. We want to, I think, I'm sitting here thinking, I was like, I think this is your slide.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, a couple points on here for me. I'll let you start.
Sure. So the idea is that we want to standardize all SIG network projects around Gateway API instead of implementation-specific extensions. What we saw was happening is that at the same time Gateway API was growing, the set of features supported by Ingress-NGINX was also growing. So we effectively had 2 APIs kind of forming in parallel, which was Gateway API and also Ingress-NGINX.
Which is not an API.
Yeah, not quite an API, but kind of an API, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, there's only so many maintainers around. I wish there would be more. If anyone wants to volunteer, we could always benefit from more maintainers on all these projects. But really, we're trying to focus everyone in one direction, and we're hoping that direction can be Gateway API. So maybe I'll hand it off to you to talk about that.
With that conversation with Rob and others on the SIG network team, it was decided that for a variety of reasons, one, the name being one of them, that we would shift our focus to a new project. I think we announced it in Salt Lake City as Ingate, and that focus would be on Gateway API support. It will be a smaller subset of Ingress support for very focused use cases on Ingress, but it will be a gateway API implementation, and we're trying to shift Ingress-NGINX into maintenance mode. Right now, that is a very long tail. We're going to talk about that a little bit more later. And it does say 18 months. 18 months seems like a long time, but it is not. So we're going to continue to work on that and continue shifting our focus into Ingate.
You'll see we have the word approximate in many, many slides. We somehow missed it in this one. I think that's on me, but approximate is key.
Approximate. But why are we doing this? As Rob already talked about, we want to push and standardize on Gateway API for a lot of the SIG network projects. Gateway API was frozen greater than 5 years ago. I think I started greater than 5 years ago on the Ingress-NGINX project, so it was very interesting when we did the GA. I think the GA for Ingress was also around some of the same time that we were saying no new features on Ingress. Adding new features, like I've said, is not a great experience. It's not a great experience for users, especially when CVEs happen. It's interesting when you don't validate user input, you'll have CVEs. Again, we want to, with the great number of functionality that Ingress-NGINX supports, we want to help push that into the Gateway API so that other implementations can also benefit from those as well. That last one, like we said, OSS contributors don't grow on trees. We have a lot of work to do and a lot of work that isn't just code. It's design, documentation, having conversations, testing. We do need those folks as non-code contributors as well. But there's a big question of, are we ready for this? Is Gateway API ready for this? Is Ingress-NGINX ready for this? And one of the easiest things for us to look at and understand is the feature parity. I continue to say this. I think I wrote this slide a while ago. It does a lot. We have to maintain a lot. I am always concerned when a Lua PR comes in because I've not written Lua. It is concerning from that perspective, but we do have 43 dependencies across 4 architectures for 3 Helm versions. So we try to support 3 Helm versions, and we have a plethora of configurations for deployment. 68 command line flags. I still don't think 100 plus end-to-end tests is accurate, but the big one that I want to talk about is that guy. 118 annotations. That's probably, besides the configuration options, yeah, that's something that we definitely need to look at. But 118 annotations is most of the features and functionality that we have. So Rob and I looked at the Gateway API support for those pieces of functionality. Today, if we were to have Ingate and be able to support version 1.2 of Gateway, only 35% of the functionality in Ingress-NGINX would we be able to implement. Supported soon is 55, so you see that big purple slice. Likely soon is that there are gaps being worked through the system. There's PRs being worked into the API that we would be able to implement. Again, those would also take time because it has to be implemented in the API, and then the implementations have to do that. Those last 2 points are concerning for all of us, right? There is, I think that's about 45% that we have no plans for implementation. So I'll give you a little bit more of an idea with this example. So we broke off those 118 configuration options, those annotations, into about 40 groups. And as you see from an external auth perspective, there's not a lot of plans for that. There's a lot of red in there. And then Ingress, right? So the idea is that if the functionality exists in Gateway API, it will not in Ingress, and you have to migrate your Ingress objects to Gateway API objects. If the functionality is not there, this is the call out that we're asking for. We need your feedback. A lot of you raised your hands. This is a very big room. I hope to see a lot of results from this survey. We need to understand what is your limitation for migrating to Gateway API. What is the feature set and functionality that you use for Ingress-NGINX, and how we can help prioritize those 118 configuration options. I mean, we're not going to do all 118. I continue to say this, but yeah, it's not looking great. We're not going to implement all 118. So we looked at I think it was earlier this week, I was like, well, we're not going to do mod security because we're not going to do WAF. And then we did find out that somebody did put in a gap. Somebody is trying to get that implemented into the API. So again, it's a conversation with the community, with us, and we need to understand what you all are using so we can prioritize that functionality and get it into Gateway API. Yeah, this is me. So again, some significant features like we were talking about, like you saw the screenshot, that's just one feature group. We have 40. So there's a lot of conversations. I'll put out the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet's out there that everybody can look at and try to understand like what our thought process is for this migration. But basic and external auth, that's a gap. I think rate limiting, is a gap.
It's still a gap. It's one of the most requested features, so it's likely going to fit in, but it's not in Gateway today.
Mod security, we found that we didn't update the slides for, so it's there. It's being requested, and someone is hopefully working on it. Open telemetry integration.
Yeah, so maybe there's another way to look at this. Maybe we should be looking at this not in terms of the gaps in Gateway API, but maybe we can look at the gaps in Ingress-NGINX. There's a Venn diagram here, and that Venn diagram is that Ingress-NGINX supports a lot of things that Gateway API does not support, and Gateway API supports a lot of things that Ingress-NGINX doesn't support. So to give you a slightly rosier view of the future, there are things coming that if you move to Gateway API, as part of that migration, you'll unlock access to a lot of hopefully exciting new things. So there are a lot of important features that are really difficult to represent with annotations. So through no fault of Ingress-NGINX or anything like that, there's just things that don't really fit in the Ingress API or an extension of it. So migrating to Gateway API can help unlock some of those things. This is an incomplete list, but it gives you an idea of the kinds of things that, again, are very difficult to represent with an annotation, but fit neatly into Gateway API. So whether you want to match based on headers, query params, methods, whether you want to modify request or response headers, make some cross namespace references. So let's say you want to send traffic from a route to a service in a different namespace, or you want to traffic split across namespaces, gRPC routing, some more advanced traffic splitting capabilities. Or maybe you just want to use the same API for your mesh if you're using service. Anyone using service mesh out here? OK, there's a few. So could be useful for that. And then I just have to do a shameless plug for this. One of the things I'm really excited about in Gateway is that we're building an inference extension to help with inference routing. So if you're running LLMs in your cluster, we're building an extension. We have an extension that transforms any gateway into an inference gateway. And I don't want to focus too much on this. I think it's really exciting. I'm biased. But one of the things I want to highlight is this is a sign of all the new innovation in these APIs is happening in Gateway API. So if we can all get together behind this one direction, it should help everyone out by granting access to more features and more capabilities. But I have to be honest. We all know this is more than just features, right? I have people come to Gateway and say, this is way too complicated, or this is too annoying, or you're using CRDs. There's a lot of reasons that aren't just, I don't have the feature I want, right? It's also the experience. So to be frank, using CRDs is different, at least, than using entry APIs, and it comes with its own set of challenges. Gateway API is built with CRDs by default, which means it's not included by default. This does have a very significant advantage. Anytime we release a new version of Gateway API, it means that you can install it in your cluster as long as you're running one of the 5 most recent versions of Kubernetes. So you don't have to wait to upgrade to Kubernetes 133, 134 to get a new feature. It's ready the same day Gateway API releases. That's great. The not so great part is in most cases, you have to manage the CRDs yourself. We're working on that. Some cluster providers already manage the CRDs for you, like GKE, but there are lots of things in progress, like maybe we should just include Gateway API by default in Kubernetes. We had some interesting discussions about that at Maintainer Summit. So lots of things in progress, but that gives you an idea of one of the areas we want to work on that isn't strictly a feature. And then, quite frankly, Gateway API is more complex than Ingress. There's no way around that, right? Ingress is a single resource. It's very simple. Gateway API has gateway, ingress, gateway and HTTP route. Wow. And then maybe gRPC route if you want to do some gRPC routing. More features and capabilities also, by definition, lead to more complexity. And it's particularly noticeable in that very simple case, the hello world case, where you just want the simplest possible thing. So some of the ideas we've been circulating around is, can we make HTTP route useful on its own? I had a previous talk where I kind of showed side by side Ingress API and HTTP route. And it's very similar. If you just take an ingress and translate it to HTTP route, it looks almost identical. There's a bunch of optional fields in HTTP route which allow you to do a lot more, but by default, they're very, very similar. And maybe we should introduce a default gateway so you just don't need to think about that. You just create HTTP routes and it feels very similar to Ingress. So these are, again, things we're thinking about to provide a very similar experience that you're used to with Ingress-NGINX. The last thing I'll say is also CRD related, that if you've worked with CRDs before, you may have noticed that using kubectl with those CRDs does not feel great sometimes. If you've ever had the privilege of running kubectl describe against a CRD, it is really just like the YAML output without dashes. I don't know why that is what it is, but it's very confusing. So there's also very limited options to customize kubectl get output. Like if we want to display a list, for example, of IP addresses, that's surprisingly challenging to do well. There's some work going on for that. And unfortunately, one of the things in Gateway is there's references, say, between an HTTP route and a gateway, and we don't have a really great way of surfacing in kubectl that this reference is broken. So we're working with upstream to try and make these things better in kubectl, but before that happens, we already have a tool for that, and that's gateway-ctl. It's a drop-in replacement for kubectl, for Gateway API, and it does a lot of things that kubectl just can't do right now. So it allows you to show connected resources, print a resource graph so you can kind of understand the whole picture of how all your resources connect together. It also can analyze your Gateway API configuration and identify any problems in that, and detect any connected policies or extensions of the API and group them all together so you can understand the full picture, not just Gateway API itself, but the extensions around it. So just to give you a brief example of that, so say you get a service and you want to say, hey, what routes are pointing to that service? Gateway-ctl can show you that. Or you get a gateway and you want to say, how many routes are attached to my gateway? Gateway-ctl can show you that. Or similarly, you have a gateway class and you wonder how many gateways are using this gateway class. You can also see that with gateway-ctl pretty easily. Now, there's also just some useful bits here. So if you want to describe, you know how I mentioned that kubectl describe with CRDs is rather frustrating? Mm-hmm. We tried to make that better with gateway-ctl. So you can say, oh, there's all these attached routes to my gateway, and those routes point to these backends. And you can also describe a service and see, pointing up, here are the routes that are pointing to my service. So if you're ever curious, who's pointing at my service? Is it safe to delete my service, for example? This can tell you that. And then the last thing, if you want to print out just a graph of how all these things fit together, gateway-ctl can also do that. So this is just an example of the things we're working on to focus on providing a better experience with Gateway API. I know it can feel very overwhelming to use an API that has this many features, but we really do care about making this experience better. So to be clear, there's lots more work to do with gateway-ctl. Believe it or not, all that fit into 0.1 of gateway-ctl, so we have a lot more to go. But I'm excited about just what we can do to make the experience better for Gateway. We really do care about making this transition as smooth as it possibly can be, and there's lots of room to help out and give us feedback on what works and what doesn't.
So again, closing the gap. Are we ready for this? I mean, I'll tell you right now, we're not. It's pretty obvious from this conversation. But there are, again, other tools that help make this possible, even if you're not using Ingate. So Ingress, the Gateway API, is a project from Kubernetes SIG that has this idea of like a provider framework. So if you have ingresses that are in GCE, Cilium, any of those things, you can convert those to Gateway API resources and give you a YAML manifest and give you an idea of what it would look like. Again, this is one of those things where it's 80-20. There's also contributors to this. And we went and looked, and I told you, and I'm going to continue to say it, there's 118 annotations. Unfortunately, Ingress to Gateway only supports 6. not great. So even from the migration path perspective, we still have work to do to help make that migration, smooth. And with that, Rob has.
Yeah. So what are we going to do? This seems like an insurmountable task. There's a lot of features to get in, and we have a relatively short timeline to do it in. One of the things that you may know about Gateway API is that we try to limit the number of features in every release so that we can have manageable releases and focus on the things that we think are most important. What we're planning to do going forward until we can close this gap or close the most important gaps with Ingress-NGINX.
That you tell us is important?
Yes, that you tell us. So this is, again, based on that survey. Don't worry, there's going to be another link at the end. If you don't respond to that survey, please don't blame us later. We're relying a lot on that survey. So we're going to add 2 temporary slots just to help close this gap that are going to be just for Ingress-NGINX compatibility. And they're meant to close feature gaps with Ingress-NGINX exclusively. We're going to aim to release at least 3 times each in 2025 and 2026. So you look at that and you say, okay, well, that's 12 features for Ingress-NGINX. I get it. That's not a lot. Remember that we're talking about categories. This is not, like say 10 annotations may be a single feature. This is not a one-to-one mapping, but just gives you an idea. We're not going to be able to cover all 118, but I think we're going to be able to cover a huge percentage of them. So that's what we're working on as we go forward. Now, I do want to be clear that there are some guidelines here. All the new features are subject to all the same criteria we already have in Gateway API. We can't just let every single thing into the API. We're not going to lower standards. I'm not saying Ingress-NGINX standards are low for it by any stretch. I'm just saying we have to meet all the same criteria that we would. This is not trying to special case any one thing. And also, we will only accept features that we believe can be securely implemented. And also...
Oh, you don't want to let users use Lua?
It sounds fun, but
okay.
And we will also not accept features that can only be implemented by a single proxy, whether that's Nginx, Envoy, you pick. The whole idea with Gateway API is trying to provide a portable API across implementations. Remember, we have 30 or so implementations of Gateway API. We want you to be able to migrate to any one of those just as easily. This is just to help you migrate to Gateway. Now, you may ask, is this special treatment? I have gotten that question before. We are prioritizing a migration path for users of a SIG network project that is going to be archived. Like, you think about this as a broader Kubernetes SIG. This is a SIG network project, and we're saying, hey, this project is being archived in some approximate time in the future. I won't go there. And we need to provide a path off. So yes, this is not prioritizing a destination. It's trying to provide a safe path for people that are already using a project that is under SIG network. Of course, if other Ingress controllers are planning a similar archival, happy to help with that migration as well. But again, that's what we're trying to do here.
Keep wanting to say that this is an approximate timeline. So we've got Gateway API version implementations on here. So talking about those feature sets and trying to get those implemented. Working on, we announced it at, I think it was Salt Lake City, which was a year and a half conversation in the making. So we want the goal, again, the approximation of these things is that in Atlanta, we'll be able to have, an 01 update that folks can test and continue to work on and give us feedback on that. When I say stable from an in-gate perspective, we are going to define what we consider to be stable. In my mind, it's passing the conformance tests, because that's one of the requirements for a Gateway API implementation. Version 1.2, maybe at this time, 1.6. We will be using controller runtime, so hopefully that helps, lessen the load on us as maintainers to work on that. And then once we have that stable release that we've defined, we will start the conversation with the Kubernetes community that the project will actually be archived. We're saying maintenance mode. Maintenance mode from an Ingress-NGINX perspective, I talked about this in my previous talk, like 5 minutes literally before this one, is that we're going to continue with monthly patch releases. If you have a PR that is open for Ingress-NGINX right now, please let us know, because we are only planning one more minor release. We only implement new features in minor releases. But we'll continue with supporting all of the Kubernetes versions that are going to come up until 2027. So 1.13 will likely be the last minor release, and we'll continue with patches, Golang, Kubernetes versions updates from that. But again, it is it's a conversation between the maintainers of Ingate and the community, and we can't have a conversation unless you let us know what you're using and what you're looking for from the implementation.
Please take the survey, please.
So with that.
Yeah, so we'll bring the survey slide up at the end, I promise, because we really do want as many people as possible to be able to take that. So the features used most by most Ingress-NGINX users should be included natively in Gateway API. That's our big goal. We'll need help to get there, but that is the huge focus for us over the next 18 months, we'll say. And not just should they be in Ingress-NGINX, we also want them to be in Ingress to Gateway, so you can automatically take your Ingress-NGINX manifests, convert them to Gateway API, and have equivalent behavior at the end. We also want to highlight that it's not just all the features you already have. We're hoping that this will unlock a whole new set of capabilities for you as you migrate to Gateway API.
And again, we know that it's a complex migration. There's lots of new objects. There's lots of new RBAC. It is going to be it's a difficult migration. That's why we continue to ask people to help us, let us know what is difficult about it. What are the bugs? What's the user experience like? Does it work in OpenShift? So there's lots of things that there's things that we just don't know from a user experience perspective. So please let us know.
And if you can't tell, there's a lot of work to do. So if you would like to help make this journey better for everyone, both projects, so Gateway API itself has weekly community meetings. We definitely want to welcome contributors from every background. And also, if you're want to work on a Gateway implementation by the maintainers of Ingress-NGINX, that's Ingate, and so that information is up there as well. But with that, one last thing, sorry. At KubeCon tomorrow, if you're interested in having kind of a group discussion about how we can make this better, we're having a just working session, basically. So come provide your feedback. We'll have Ingress-NGINX maintainers, Gateway API maintainers there to hear your feedback, help us prioritize the future together, and maybe if you're interested, help get involved. We can point you to what's next. And with that, let me jump back to this all-important slide. Please take the survey, and that is all we have for you today. Thank you so much.
So yeah, we got.